So picture this. You wake up.
Okay.
The room is completely dark.
Oh!
Or, I mean, maybe there's just this tiny cold sliver of streetlight kind of creeping through the blinds.
Right. Just that ambient city glow.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And your brain is, it's barely online. You haven't even fully registered what day it is or how you slept or, what you were just dreaming about.
You're in that totally liminal space.
Yes. But your hand, and it's almost like it has its own, I don't know, autonomous nervous system, is already reaching out.
It just knows exactly where to go.
Right. It's fumbling across the nightstand, kind of feeling around the lamp base, searching for that familiar, smooth rectangle of cold glass.
The lifeline.
The lifeline. You find it, you grab your phone, bring it to your face, and the screen just flares to life. You squint against that harsh, artificial blue light, and right there, before you've even taken a single conscious breath, the onslaught begins.
It really is an onslaught, yeah.
Like one notification morphs into five become 20. You've suddenly got a barrage of text messages, 4 different short-form videos someone sent you at 2 in the morning.
Always at 2 in the morning.
Always. Plus, some terrifying news headline about the global markets, a work email from your boss that just instantly spikes your cortisol, and like an aggressively cheerful ad for shoes you looked at for 3 seconds on Tuesday.
Right. It's just this immediate sensory overload.
Exactly. Before your feet have even touched the floor, before you've set a single intention for your own day, your mind is already entirely fragmented.
And the craziest part about that whole scenario, we just call that a normal Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of a hostile takeover of your morning, of your initial cognitive state.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. You are here with us, and today we are unpacking this incredibly dense, just provocative piece of writing called The Digital Siege: Reclaiming the Fragmented Mind.
It's a heavy one, but it is so necessary.
It is. And look, I want to set the parameters for this conversation right out of the gate because I know it is very easy to sort of roll your eyes when someone brings up screen time.
Oh, totally. People immediately put their defenses up.
Right. They think, oh, great, here comes the puritanical lecture. But our mission today is not to wag a finger at you. We are not here to tell you to put your phone down and go outside and touch grass.
Right. The source material is operating on a much, much higher level than just phones are bad.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. We are dissecting the author's assertion that we are currently living in the most distracted era in the entirety of human history.
In all of human history. Think about that.
It's massive. We're going to analyze the actual mechanics of this distraction, how it's fundamentally rewiring our neurology, how it's basically dissolving the concept of deep work, and how it's actively eroding the architecture of our personalities.
And ultimately what that means for human agency, for our actual freedom.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that the word siege in the title, The Digital Siege, that's chosen very deliberately by the author.
Oh, absolutely. They frame this not as some passive cultural shift, like the transition from radio to television.
Yeah, it's not just a new medium.
No, it is an active, continuous war for human attention. So if you're listening to this right now and you constantly walk around with this low-level ambient sense of exhaustion.
Your mental fraying at the edges.
Yes, where you just feel overwhelmed, but you can't pinpoint why. Well, this material is going to explain the exact mechanics behind that feeling. You are operating in an environment explicitly engineered to dismantle your focus.
Which is terrifying. But let's start with the physical objects themselves, because the first section of the text points out this massive historical anomaly.
Right, the fact that billions of us are carrying these machines.
Right in our pockets.
Yeah.
Never before have billions of human beings walked around carrying machines specifically designed to interrupt them.
And interrupt them constantly.
Yeah. We have this habit of referring to our smartphones as tools. We say, oh, it's just a tool I use for work and staying in touch. But the source really pushes back on that word.
It does, because a tool is passive. Think about a traditional tool. A hammer is a tool.
Right.
You go out to the garage, you pick up the hammer when you have a specific goal, you need to drive a nail into the wall, and when you're done, you put the hammer back in the drawer.
Right. And the hammer doesn't, vibrate in the drawer 3 hours later to remind you that nails exist.
Exactly. It doesn't ping to show you what the neighbor's hammer is doing. It just sits there. The phone is not a passive tool. It is an active agent.
Okay, so that distinction between a passive tool and an active agent, that's all rooted in the design of the interface, right?
Right. Every single vibration, every banner notification that drops down, every little red dot on an app icon, it's a calculated extraction of your attention.
It's designed to pull you in. The text actually points out that the average person checks their phone hundreds of times a day.
Hundreds, which sounds absurd until you actually track it.
Yeah, if you pause and audit that behavior, like how many of those checks are born out of actual practical necessity?
Almost none of them.
Right. How often are you genuinely checking the time or waiting for some life-altering phone call? The vast majority of these interactions are pure Pavlovian conditioning.
And I want to pause on that term Pavlovian conditioning because I think it gets thrown around a lot in pop culture.
Yeah, we all know the story, right?
Right.
Pavlov rings the bell, the dogs salivate.
Exactly. But how does a piece of glass and silicon condition a human being that thoroughly? What is the actual mechanism inside the phone doing to our brains?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the specific psychological mechanism the source identifies is called intermittent variable rewards.
Intermittent variable rewards. Okay, break that down for us.
So it goes back to this psychologist, B.F. Skinner, and his work with operant conditioning in the mid-20th century.
Right, the famous Skinner boxes.
Yes. Skinner put pigeons in these boxes with a little lever. And at first, when he set the lever to dispense a pellet of food, every single time the pigeon pecked it, the pigeon would just pick the lever when it was hungry.
Makes sense. Predictable reward, predictable behavior.
Exactly. I'm hungry, I press the lever, I get food. Done. But then Skinner changed the mechanism. He set it so the lever only dispensed food sometimes.
Oh, in a totally unpredictable, random pattern.
Yes. And the pigeons completely lost their minds.
They became obsessed.
They pecked the lever incessantly, compulsively, because they never knew if the next peck was going to be the one that delivered the reward.
So it's literally a slot machine.
It is the exact neurological mechanism that drives gambling addiction. When you pull your phone out of your pocket and unlock it, you are pulling the lever on a slot machine.
That is such a visceral way to think about it.
Right. Most of the time it's nothing. Just a spam email from a clothing store or a totally mundane text in a group chat. Sometimes it's a message from someone you are romantically interested in. Or it's a piece of highly validating gossip. Or a news story that completely enrages you.
Right. It doesn't even have to be a positive reward. It just has to be highly stimulating.
Exactly. Because the reward is unpredictable, your brain becomes conditioned to constantly check the lever, just in case.
And this conditioning has become so incredibly pervasive now that the absence of the lever-like, the absence of the input itself, is perceived by the brain as a negative state.
Oh, the source material has this incredibly vivid observation about this. It notes that silence now feels uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
Waiting in line feels unbearable. Sitting alone with your own thoughts feels almost physically painful.
I think everyone listening right now can relate to that.
Oh, 100%. Let's just look at the grocery store line. Picture it.
Yeah.
You're standing there, you've got your basket of groceries, and the person in front of you is just moving so slowly.
They're digging around for a coupon.
Right. Or they're debating the price of avocados with the cashier, or counting out exact change in pennies. And you are faced with exactly 2 minutes of forced idleness.
Just 2 minutes.
I feel this myself, and it's honestly almost embarrassing to admit. There is this physical itch, this magnetic pull in my right pocket.
Because 2 minutes of standing perfectly still without looking at a screen feels agonizing.
Well, wait. Humanity spent thousands of years just waiting, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. Waiting for the rain to stop, waiting for bread to bake, waiting for a carriage to arrive.
So how did we lose the capacity to stand in a room for 120 seconds?
Well, the source argues that we lost it because the baseline for what our brains consider to be normal stimulation has been artificially hyperinflated.
Artificially hyperinflated, meaning we're used to a fire hose of content.
Exactly. When your baseline expectation is constant, rapid-fire, algorithmic novelty like swiping through completely different contexts every 3 seconds on a video app, the natural pace of the physical world feels agonizingly slow.
It feels like sensory deprivation.
It really does. And the direct casualty of this hyperinflated baseline is the death of boredom. The author argues that we are effectively eradicating boredom from the human experience entirely.
Which, okay, if we're being totally honest, that sounds like a massive victory.
Right.
Nobody actually enjoys the sensation of being bored.
Sure, if you ask a kid what the worst part of their day was, they'll always say, I was bored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why is eradicating boredom framed as this huge crisis in the text?
Because the text says we fundamentally misunderstand what boredom actually is. We view it as this void, this emptiness that we have to fill up with something.
Right, like an empty bucket.
Yeah. But neurologically speaking, boredom is an incredibly vital, active state. It is the gestation period for deep reflection.
A gestation period. I love that.
When you are bored, when you are not actively processing external stimuli like a screen or a podcast, your brain activates something called the default mode network, the DMN.
Okay, let's unpack the default mode network because that sounds really important.
Yeah.
What is actually happening in the brain when that activates?
So, the DMN is a network of interacting brain regions that are active specifically when a person is not focused on the outside world.
So it's what happens when your mind wanders.
Exactly. When you are staring out the window of a train or standing in the shower, the DMN kicks in. And this network is responsible for autobiographical memory consolidation.
Wait, meaning what?
Meaning, it helps you construct the actual narrative of who you are based on what you've experienced. It's how you process your own life story.
Wow. Right.
It is also responsible for simulating the future. It's where you process unresolved, complex emotions. And crucially, it is the engine of human creativity.
So that's why your best ideas always seem to come to you when you're in the shower or going for a walk without your phone.
Exactly.
Okay.
The DMN connects completely disparate ideas and memories that your conscious brain wouldn't normally put together.
So the DMN is essentially the brain's internal maintenance and innovation department.
That's a perfect way to put it. Now, think about what happens when you reflexively reach for your phone the exact millisecond you feel a hint of boredom.
You're suppressing it. You're shutting down the DMN.
You are denying your brain the opportunity to wander. And the source makes this chilling point. If the mind never wanders, it never stumbles upon anything truly original.
Right. By eradicating boredom, we're structurally preventing the mind from doing the deep associative work that leads to independent thought.
Yes.
I see the logic there, I really do. But I have to push back here a little bit. Let's play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
Isn't this just the latest version of a very old moral panic?
How so?
I mean, humanity has always looked for ways to distract itself. Think about 50 years ago. Didn't people just bury their faces in the morning newspaper at the breakfast table, completely ignoring their families?
Sure, the classic dad at the table behind the paper.
Right, or people would just mindlessly flip through 70 channels of cable television for 4 hours every night. People have been zoning out to avoid their own thoughts for a very long time.
They absolutely have.
So how is this current digital era actually any different from the guy hiding behind the Wall Street Journal in 1985?
It is a critical distinction, and the source material addresses this exact counterargument head-on. The difference lies in the nature of the media itself.
Okay.
The newspaper in 1985 was a static, passive object. It didn't know who was reading it.
Right. Everyone got the exact same newspaper.
Exactly. It couldn't track which specific headlines made your pupils dilate. It didn't dynamically rearrange its layout in real time to show you a more enraging article the moment it sensed your attention slipping.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And most importantly, the newspaper didn't interrupt you when you weren't looking at it.
It didn't vibrate from the other side of the room.
Exactly. It didn't hijack your cognitive flow while you were playing with your kids or trying to cook dinner.
Right. A newspaper doesn't have an agenda. It just exists. It's finite. You get to the back page and the experience is over. But the phone is infinite and it actively adapts to you.
And it adapts to you based on highly sophisticated, incredibly well-funded algorithms that have analyzed your specific psychological vulnerabilities.
That's the scary part.
It is an asymmetric conflict. You are bringing your ancient evolutionary brain, which is hardwired to seek out novelty and tribal information just for basic survival, up against server farms.
Server farms filled with supercomputers.
Running machine learning models designed to exploit that exact evolutionary wiring. You are entirely outmatched. The guy reading the newspaper was interacting with ink on paper. You are interacting with an entity that learns your weaknesses.
Okay. If these platforms are actively learning our weaknesses and exploiting our evolutionary wiring, we have to look at the motivation.
Follow the money.
Exactly. Why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Which brings us to a major pivot in the source material, moving from the psychology of the user to the economics of the platform, the attention economy.
This is where it gets really dark.
There is a line in the text that actually made me stop reading and just stare at the wall. It says, "Your exhaustion is part of the business model."
It is a chillingly accurate summary of the modern digital economy.
Your exhaustion is part of the business model. Unpack that for us.
Well, think about when people sit down on their couch at 8 p.m., exhausted from their workday, and pull out their phones to scroll through social media or a short video feed.
They genuinely believe they are engaging in a relaxing activity.
Right. They think, I've had a long, stressful day. I'm just going to unwind, turn my brain off, and look at something funny.
But the text argues that while you think you are resting, your attention is actively being hunted.
Hunted, yes.
I was trying to visualize what this hunt actually looks like, and I kept coming back to the architecture of a casino.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy. Walk us through that.
Okay, so think about how a physical brick-and-mortar casino is designed to operate. When you walk onto the casino floor, the environment is meticulously controlled.
Completely synthetic.
Yeah. There are no clocks anywhere on the walls. There are no windows to let you see the sun go down or the weather change outside.
They don't want you to know time is passing.
Exactly. The carpets are usually these loud, chaotic, disorienting patterns, so you don't look down. The lights are flashing. The sounds are engineered in a specific musical key, usually C major, apparently, to keep you in a state of heightened physiological arousal.
Wow, I didn't know that about the musical key.
Yeah. The entire architecture of the building is designed to systematically dismantle your internal sense of time, so you lose your bearings and just keep pulling the lever.
And the source is basically arguing that the smartphone is that exact same architecture, just miniaturized and put in your pocket.
The casino analogy is structurally perfect here. Let's map it directly onto the digital interface. What are the no clocks and no windows of the digital space?
It's the infinite scroll.
Yes.
There is no bottom to the feed. There's no natural stopping cue, no back page of the newspaper to signal that the experience is over.
And what are the loud carpets and flashing lights?
The bright red notification badges. They are explicitly designed to trigger the color receptor cells in your eyes that signal urgency and danger in nature.
And the pit boss watching the floor to see who's winning and who's losing.
That's the algorithm. Tracking your session time, measuring your micro hesitations as you scroll past an image, noting exactly how many milliseconds you lingered on a specific video.
It's watching everything you do.
Everything. And the goal of the physical casino and the digital app are identical. Prolonged engagement. You have to understand that in the modern digital economy, human attention is the single most valuable commodity on Earth.
More than oil.
The text actually makes that comparison. It is treated the way industrial titans treated oil or timber in the 19th century.
Right.
Trillion-dollar tech conglomerates are competing in this brutal zero-sum game for every single second of your focus.
Because the longer you stay scrolling,
the more behavioral data you generate and the more targeted advertisements you consume. Therefore, the more profitable you become to the platform.
this exposes a massive fundamental misalignment of goals between the user and the tool.
Totally.
Because as a user, my goal is to unwind, right? Or to briefly connect with a friend or find a specific piece of information.
But the platform's goal is to keep you on the platform at any cognitive cost.
Right. The algorithm does not care if the content it serves makes me anxious or angry or insecure or deeply depressed, so long as those negative emotions keep me engaged.
Outrage is actually more engaging than joy.
Exactly. The platforms are not designed to help you focus or find peace. They are explicitly designed to keep you distracted for as long as humanly possible.
And that misalignment is exactly why your exhaustion is the business model. The author asks us to think of human attention as a finite natural resource.
Like you only wake up with a certain amount of cognitive bandwidth each day.
Right. You only have so much in the tank. And these platforms act like logging companies that are relentlessly strip mining the human mind.
Strip mining, that's bleak.
They are extracting your focus without any regulatory oversight and without any regard for the ecological damage they are doing to your cognitive environment.
So you feel exhausted at the end of the day, not necessarily because your job was physically demanding.
Right, you might have just sat at a desk.
But because your attention has been artificially extracted from you, drop by drop, for 14 hours.
Cognitive strip mining. It's a terrifying concept.
But I mean, if they are strip mining us, they can't just keep showing us the same things over and over, right?
Yeah.
The brain adapts. It gets bored even with the distractions.
It builds a tolerance.
Right. So how do they keep the extraction going? The source material says they have to actually weaponize our own neurochemistry against us.
Yes. And it refers to this as dopamine optimization, which ties directly into the collapse of our ability to do deep work.
Okay, let's get into the dopamine aspect, because I think we really need to define how dopamine actually functions here.
We do, because it is probably one of the most misunderstood chemicals in the public consciousness today.
Yeah, people always use dopamine hit to mean a sudden burst of pleasure, like eating a cupcake.
Exactly. But neurobiologically, dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure or reward. It is the chemical of anticipation and craving.
Wait, explain that. Because I always thought dopamine was the good feeling you got after you ate the chocolate or after you saw the 100 likes on your post.
It's a common misconception. Robert Sapolsky, the neurobiologist at Stanford, did this fascinating work on this that the text alludes to.
Oh, the monkey study.
Right. So if you take a monkey and train it that a light will come on, and if it presses a lever 10 times after the light comes on, it will get a treat.
Okay.
When do you think the dopamine spikes in the monkey's brain?
I mean, normally you'd think it's when the monkey eats the treat.
Exactly, but it's not. The dopamine spikes the exact moment the light comes on.
Before the work is even done.
Yes, the dopamine is what gives the monkey the energy and the motivation to do the work of pressing the lever. It is the chemical of wanting, not the chemical of liking.
Oh, wow. So apply to our phones. The notification ping or the vibration in your pocket. That is the light coming on.
Exactly. The dopamine spikes before you even see the message. It's the anticipation that someone might have reached out.
And the tech companies know this.
They know it intimately. Content is now hyper-optimized to trigger that anticipation cycle endlessly. To keep you hooked, the friction has to be completely removed.
Right, so the short videos have to get even shorter.
The visual cuts in those videos have to be faster, sometimes changing every single second.
The headlines have to be louder, more sensational, more clickbaity. It just creates this state of perpetual anticipation. It's like we are feeding our brains a diet of pure, refined digital sugar.
That's exactly what it is.
Every swipe is just pixie sticks of synthetic dopamine. And I mean, here is the problem with existing on a diet of pure sugar. It completely ruins your palate.
Right, natural sweetness doesn't even register anymore.
Exactly. When your brain is accustomed to that level of hyperspeed, high-intensity stimulation, a complex carbohydrate like reading a 400-page book or having a nuanced hour-long conversation with a friend suddenly feels impossible to digest.
It feels heavy and laborious and painfully slow.
Because the real physical world just cannot compete with the algorithmic pacing of the digital world.
It can't, and the brain is incredibly adaptable. It exhibits neuroplasticity.
Meaning it changes its physical structure based on what we do.
Right. It will wire itself to match the environment it spends the most time in. If you spend 8 hours a day in a hyper-fragmented, high-speed digital environment, your brain wires itself for fragmentation.
So you're structurally changing your brain to be scattered.
Exactly. And the text points out the real-world consequences of this adaptation. Reading a novel becomes a Herculean task for many adults today.
It really does. People joke about it all the time. Like, I haven't read a book since high school.
Right. Or watching a 2-hour film without reflexively reaching for a second screen to look up the actors on IMDb or check your texts. It feels exhausting to just watch one thing.
We are entirely losing the cognitive stamina required to be present with slow information.
And this has massive, massive implications for what we are actually capable of producing as a species.
This brings up a really profound statement from the text. It says, focus is not just about productivity. Focus is power.
Focus is power.
It argues that the ability to sit with one thought, one complex task, or one long-term goal for an extended period of time is rapidly becoming a rare elite skill. It introduces this concept of deep work.
Right. Deep work is a term popularized by the computer science professor Cal Newport. It basically refers to the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task.
And the source material reminds us that deep work is the actual engine of human progress.
Everything we value is built on it.
Great civilizations, paradigm-shifting scientific discoveries, the drafting of complex legal constitutions, timeless literature, deep philosophical movements. None of these achievements came from a mind that was constantly interrupted every 4 minutes by a Slack message.
No. History was built by people who possessed the capacity to concentrate deeply for long stretches of time.
So if history was built by deep work, what happens when we train an entire generation to be structurally incapable of it?
Well, the text points to a phenomenon it calls the productivity paradox.
The productivity paradox.
Yeah. We look around today and we see a culture that is utterly obsessed with the aesthetic of working hard.
Oh, the hustle culture. We are constantly connected to Slack or Microsoft Teams. We are reachable 24/7.
Right. People are answering emails at 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday from their couch while watching Netflix.
On paper, we are logging more hours than ever before in human history.
But the argument here is that we are actually accomplishing significantly less meaningful, original work.
Because we have conflated frantic, responsive activity with actual value creation.
Yes. We think that instantly replying to a message thread is work, but it's usually just reactive, busy work.
And the cost of this context switching is devastating to the brain, isn't it?
It is devastating. When you are engaged in a complex task, say you're writing a proposal or coding software or even just trying to solve a hard puzzle, and you stop to check a single text message.
Just a quick check takes 2 seconds.
Right, but your brain doesn't just seamlessly transition back to the complex task. You experience what psychologists call attention residue.
Attention residue.
A significant portion of your cognitive processing power remains stuck on the interruption for sometimes up to 20 minutes after you've looked away from the phone.
20 minutes.
Yes, you are operating at a diminished capacity while your brain tries to let go of the text message.
I have this image in my head of trying to drive down the highway at 60 miles an hour, but there is a passenger in the seat next to me who just randomly yanks the emergency brake every quarter mile.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. I slam on the brakes, we skied, and then I have to accelerate all the way back up to 60 again, only to have the brake pulled again a minute later.
And what happens to the car in that scenario?
Well, I'm burning a massive amount of gas. The engine is constantly revving.
Yeah.
There's a ton of heat and friction and noise.
Yeah.
But I am not actually getting anywhere.
Exactly.
That is what our brains are doing all day. Now imagine that start and stop, that acceleration and braking happening dozens of times every single day for years.
The inevitable result of that metaphorical driving is catastrophic engine failure, or, in human terms, chronic mental burnout.
The source, beautifully and tragically, points out that an entire generation feels mentally depleted. Not because they are digging ditches or physically laboring.
I mean, many of us sit in ergonomic chairs in climate-controlled rooms all day.
Right. But we're exhausted because our attention never gets to rest. It is constantly being yanked in a dozen different directions.
And if we are structurally preventing the kind of deep, unbroken focus required to solve complex problems, we really have to ask ourselves some scary questions.
Like what?
Are we preventing the next great scientific breakthroughs? Are we capable of solving climate change or geopolitical crises if our collective working memory is completely shattered?
It's a terrifying question. But this cognitive scattering, this engine burning out, it doesn't magically reset when we clock out of our jobs.
No, it doesn't say at the office.
We carry that fragmented, exhausted brain home with us in our cars or on the train. It follows us through our front doors, into our living rooms, into our kitchens, and into our beds.
And this is where the source material takes a much more intimate and frankly heartbreaking turn.
Yes. The text asserts that distraction isn't just an economic issue or a workplace efficiency issue. It is actively eroding our personalities and dissolving human connection.
This is where we look at the actual psychological toll of chronic fragmentation. The text states that a distracted mind operates fundamentally differently than a focused mind.
Because of that neuroplasticity we discussed.
Exactly. People who exist in a state of constant interruption are becoming more reactive, more impulsive, less tolerant of frustration, and significantly less emotionally present.
Wait, I want to drill down into that because calling it an erosion of personality feels, I don't know, a bit apocalyptic.
It's a heavy charge.
It feels like a very heavy charge. If I pull out my phone and check it under the dinner table, it definitely makes me a bit rude in that moment.
Yes.
Sure. But does it actually change who I fundamentally am as a person? Does it erode my actual character?
The author argues that it does, and the mechanism for that erosion is the loss of empathy.
The loss of empathy. How so?
Empathy, true, cognitive, and emotional empathy requires a massive amount of sustained attention.
Okay.
Psychologists refer to something called the theory of mind, which is your ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, and intents to other people.
So understanding what someone else is thinking and feeling.
Right. And to truly understand what someone else is going through, you have to read their subtle facial microexpressions.
Right, the little muscle twitches.
You have to hear the slight hesitation or tremor in their voice. You have to synthesize their body language with their words in real time.
Which takes a lot of brain power.
You cannot do that if your working memory is overloaded because you are 50 miles away, mentally agonizing over a work email or an inflammatory tweet you just read. You cannot be empathetic if you are not present.
That makes profound sense. Empathy is a high bandwidth cognitive process.
Yes.
If your bandwidth is tapped out by the algorithm, there is nothing left for the human being sitting directly across from you.
Nothing left.
The imagery in the text that really stung for me, because honestly I recognize myself in it, was the mention of people secretly checking notifications under the table.
Oh, everyone has done this. Or had it done to them.
You are at dinner. Your friend is telling you about a struggle they are having at work or a problem in their marriage. They are pouring their heart out.
Being totally vulnerable.
And you have your phone resting on your thigh under the table, just casually, stealthily tapping the screen to see if anything happened in the digital world in the last 4 minutes.
The text compares that action to the old trope of constantly checking your watch while someone is talking.
Yes. It is the modern equivalent of tapping your watch.
Yeah.
It is a silent but glaring subconscious signal that you would rather be somewhere else.
And people feel it, even if they don't see the phone.
They absolutely feel it. I actually had a moment of intense self-loathing recently that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, what happened?
I was having coffee with a friend, and they were telling a very long, somewhat meandering story.
As friends do.
Right. And I caught myself, my thumb actually twitched on my leg, making a swiping motion.
No.
Yes. My brain was so conditioned by podcasts and YouTube that I was subconsciously trying to fast forward my friend in real life.
Wow.
I was literally trying to 1.5x speed a human being.
That is a remarkable and frightening example of the conditioning bleeding into physical reality.
It terrified me.
And we really have to ask, what does that do to the human psyche over time? What happens to the social fabric when we constantly subtly realize that the person we are speaking to, our friend, our spouse, our parent, has mentally checked out of the conversation?
It hurts. It breeds resentment.
The text argues it creates a pervasive underlying sense of profound loneliness across society.
Even when we are more connected than ever.
Exactly. Even when we are densely packed into cities, even when we are surrounded by family in our living rooms, we feel entirely unseen. Because to be truly seen, someone has to actually look at you with undivided attention.
The text paints this incredibly bleak picture of the modern family unit. Just picture a family sitting together in the same living room, physically occupying the same couch.
Bathed in the same ambient light of the room.
But they are all staring into separate glowing rectangles. They are living in entirely isolated, personalized digital silos.
Completely different realities.
The algorithmic feed the teenager is looking at is completely different from the feed the mother is looking at, which is completely different from the father's. There's no shared reality in that room.
And if you project that forward, the developmental implications are just staggering.
Right. What does this mean for a child growing up today?
In child psychology, there is a core concept called serve and return interaction.
Serve and return, like tennis.
Exactly. A baby babbles or points at something, that's the serve.
Right.
And the parent makes eye contact, smiles, and responds, that's the return.
Right.
This repetitive process physically builds the neural architecture of the child's developing brain.
So what happens if the return never comes?
If a child's primary model of human interaction is parents who are physically present but mentally absent, parents whose eyes are constantly darting down to a screen, how does that affect the child's own ability to form secure attachments?
Or deep, lifelong friendships.
Right. We are raising an entire generation on a diet of divided attention.
We are losing our personal depth, and we are losing our horizontal connections to each other. We are becoming isolated, mentally exhausted, and emotionally reactive.
It's perfect storm.
And this perfect storm of vulnerabilities brings us to the climax of the source material. This is where the text pivots from psychological and sociological analysis into what reads like a very dark, very urgent political warning.
The stakes get much, much higher here.
It outlines what it calls the darkest truth of the digital siege: distraction as a mechanism of control.
Up until this point in the deep dive, we have discussed this issue primarily as a problem of technology design, right? Or a crisis of personal productivity, or a tragedy of interpersonal connection.
Right, personal stuff.
But the final section of the text elevates this to a macro level, a crisis of human agency and societal freedom. It states plainly, a distracted population is a controllable population.
Okay, I want to read the exact line from the text here because we need to unpack it carefully. Quote, "A society utterly addicted to entertainment becomes a passive society. When attention disappears, clarity disappears with it, stopping people from questioning things deeply." End quote.
It's a heavy claim.
It is. And how does constant distraction translate into political or societal passivity? Because honestly, if you log onto social media today, it doesn't look passive.
No, it looks incredibly chaotic and active.
Right. People are shouting, arguing, debating, protesting online all day long. It looks like the exact opposite of passivity.
But that is the brilliant illusion of the system. The text argues that the online shouting is not actual political agency. It is just emotional reactivity.
Explain the difference.
If you are constantly distracted, you are kept in a perpetual state of mental overwhelm. You are just reacting to the loudest headline, the manufactured outrage of the day, the trending topic that the algorithm has decided to amplify to get clicks.
You are entirely swept up in the frantic current of the feed.
Yes. But reacting is not the same as reflecting.
Because deep thinking, the kind of thinking that actually questions authority, that analyzes a 600-page piece of legislation, that recognizes long-term historical patterns, or that actually challenges systemic power structures.
All of that requires uninterrupted attention.
Precisely. If you want to hold power accountable, you have to be able to focus long enough to understand how the power is operating.
And endless distraction essentially short-circuits the public's ability to do that heavy cognitive lifting.
An emotionally reactive mind will just, retweet an inflammatory headline about a political opponent.
Which does nothing to change the system.
Right, but a deeply focused mind will read the underlying philosophy and organize a local grassroots movement in their community.
And the platforms encourage the former because it generates engagement, but they structurally prevent the latter because it requires logging off.
Wow. This analysis reminds me so much of the classic debate in dystopian literature.
Oh, Orwell versus Huxley.
Exactly. For the entire 20th century, we feared the Orwellian dystopia. We read 1984, and we feared the idea that we would be controlled by force.
Right, by pain, by the outright banning of books.
By a totalitarian surveillance state watching our every move and actively dictating what the truth is.
But what this source material is suggesting is that our reality is mapping much closer to Aldous Huxley's vision in Brave New World.
Or even Neil Postman's analysis in Amusing Ourselves to Death.
That is the exact philosophical lineage of this argument. Huxley feared that we wouldn't be controlled by pain, but by pleasure.
Right.
In his vision, there is no need for the state to ban books if no one has the desire or the attention span to actually read one.
That's chilling.
There is no need to actively suppress the truth if people are so overwhelmed by a chaotic sea of irrelevant information, gossip, and entertainment that the truth is just drowned out.
In the Orwellian nightmare, you are controlled by fear.
Yes.
In the Huxley nightmare, you are controlled by convenience and endless trivial amusement. And what makes the Huxley model so much more insidious is that we actively participate in our own subjugation.
We invite it in.
We are willingly giving up our cognitive autonomy because the distraction feels so good in the short term. It numbs the anxiety of existing in the modern world.
The author is arguing that this is no longer just a tech problem that can be solved with like a software update or a screen time app. It is a fundamental human crisis.
Losing our attention means losing the ability to live intentionally.
Yes, a population that is trapped in a closed loop of instant dopamine hits, algorithms, and emotional reactivity cannot organize effectively.
They can't think critically about long-term consequences like climate change or economic inequality.
And they certainly cannot challenge the status quo. The distraction is the ultimate pacifier.
I want to bring this back down from the macro societal level to the individual listener right now.
Bring it home.
Because the text frames this as a war that is fought in micro moments. It asks, are we voluntarily surrendering our free will simply because it requires too much mental effort to pay attention?
That is the precipice the author believes we are standing on. Every single time you feel a moment of stillness or a pang of boredom or a spark of anxiety.
And you reflexively reach for that phone to numb the feeling.
You are making a micro-surrender of your agency. You are letting a piece of code written in Silicon Valley decide what you're going to think about, what you are going to care about, and how you are going to feel for the next 10 minutes.
And then multiply that micro-surrender by billions of people happening dozens of times a day.
You don't just have a distracted society at that point. You have a fundamental structural shift in the nature of human consciousness.
Wow. Okay. Let's take a deep breath and just retrace the journey we've just been on. Because that is an immense amount of heavy, deeply existential material to digest.
It's a lot.
We started this deep dive with an incredibly mundane, almost universally relatable image. Waking up in the dark and letting a machine dictate the first thoughts of your day.
And we followed the mechanics of that single action all the way down the rabbit hole.
We unpacked how that morning grab is the result of sophisticated Pavlovian conditioning and intermittent variable rewards, the slot machine in your pocket.
We saw how eradicating boredom suppresses the default mode network, basically killing our inherent capacity for original thought.
We looked behind the curtain of the attention economy, realizing that our exhaustion isn't a byproduct of the system, it is the actual fuel that powers it.
We are being cognitively strip-mined.
We discussed the neurological impact of dopamine optimization, the Sapolsky monkeys, and how feeding our brains digital sugar is leading to the collapse of deep work, the very engine of human progress.
We examined the intimate domestic tragedy of this siege, too.
The erosion of personality.
Right. How it strips away our patience and our capacity for the deep empathy required to maintain meaningful human connections, leaving us completely isolated while sitting in the exact same room.
Fast-forwarding our friends.
Yes.
And finally, we confronted the systemic political danger. The dark reality that an overwhelmed, emotionally reactive, and endlessly distracted society is a passive society.
A society that has surrendered its clarity and its agency for the convenience of amusement.
The source material leaves us with a central, unavoidable question that demands an answer from every single one of us. It says, the question is no longer whether the world is distracting.
We know it is. The siege is already underway.
Right. The question is whether humans can still reclaim their minds before distraction becomes our permanent state of existence.
It is a profound call to arms. But unlike historical wars fought over land or physical resources, the battleground here is entirely internal.
It's fought behind your eyes.
It is the fight to reclaim your own cognitive real estate.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
We live in a relentlessly noisy, hyper-connected, artificially stimulating world. We are constantly told by the culture and by the algorithms themselves that to make a difference, we have to be loud.
We have to post our opinions. We have to argue in the comments.
We have to build a brand. We have to constantly engage with the discourse. But what if that is exactly what the system needs us to do to keep the extraction running?
Wow.
What if, in an era where your attention is the most heavily hunted, strip-mined resource on the planet, the ultimate act of rebellion isn't writing a manifesto?
Right.
It isn't arguing online. It isn't even moving to a cabin in the woods to go off the grid.
Then what is it?
What if the highest, most profound form of defiance left to us is simply sitting in a quiet room, doing absolutely nothing, letting your mind wander and being perfectly okay with it?